I didn't catch them in bed. I caught them in the way my husband stopped flinching when my brother's wife touched his arm. That's how I knew. I've learned that betrayal doesn't announce itself. It doesn't knock. It doesn't clear its throat. It waits until you trust the room you're standing in, then rearranges the furniture while you're still breathing. It was a Sunday, late afternoon. The kind of harmless family gathering people use as proof that nothing bad could possibly be happening. Children running in and out of rooms, glasses sweating onto coasters, laughter that lands where it's expected to. I was refilling the ice tray when I saw it. She reached for him, my sister-in-law Mara. Just her fingers. Light. Almost absent-minded. A touch meant to look accidental. It landed on his forearm. My husband, Daniel, didn't move. That's the detail that mattered. Daniel flinches. Always has. Sudden touch. Unexpected contact. He startles. I've known this about him for 11 years. I've adjusted my own body around it without ever thinking to name the habit. But when Mara touched him, his body stayed open. Not relaxed, not surprised. Open. Like a door that's been used often enough to stop making noise. I didn't say anything. I didn't freeze. I didn't gasp. I finished filling the ice tray. The cubes clinked too loudly. Or maybe that was just my pulse in my ears. I watched them for the rest of the evening. Not obviously. I didn't stare. I didn't hover. I watched the way you do when you already know the answer, and you're collecting proof for your own spine. He leaned toward her when she spoke. She mirrored his posture. They shared looks that arrived half a second too late for anyone else to notice. It wasn't lust. That would have been easier. It was familiarity. That night, after everyone left, Daniel kissed me in the kitchen and asked if I was tired. I said yes. He smiled with relief. I went to bed early. I didn't cry. I didn't confront him. I lay awake and let my mind do what it does best when I stop interfering. It lined everything up. The late work nights that only happened on days Mara babysat for my brother. The new password on Daniel's phone. The way he'd started showering immediately when he got home, like he was washing off something specific. The sudden defensiveness when my brother's name came up in conversation. I had mistaken silence for stability. The next morning, Daniel left early. I made coffee and opened the laptop we shared. He'd forgotten to log out of his email. People think betrayal is bold. It isn't. It's lazy. I didn't read everything. I didn't need to. One message was enough. Can't stop thinking about yesterday. You shouldn't. I know. I just wanted to say it. No hearts. No explicit language. No fantasy. Just confirmation. I closed the laptop and sat very still. What surprised me wasn't the pain. It was the clarity. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't loneliness or a midlife crisis or any of the excuses people dress affairs in to make them seem human. This was a choice repeated often enough to feel normal to them. By noon, I had already decided 3 things. I would not confront Daniel yet. I would not tell anyone except one person. I would not lose my footing in my own life over someone else's dishonesty. That afternoon, I drove to my brother's house. I didn't call ahead. My brother Aaron opened the door with a smile that dropped the moment he saw my face. "What's wrong?" he asked. I stepped inside. I took off my shoes. I sat at his kitchen table like I belonged there. Because I did. "Mara is sleeping with my husband," I said. I didn't soften it. I didn't pause. I didn't apologize for the sentence. Aaron stared at me. Once, twice, then he laughed. Just once, sharp and disbelieving. "No," he said. "That's not... No." I met his eyes. "I'm sure." He sat down slowly, like gravity had just increased. I told him only what I could prove. Not theories. Not feelings. Facts, patterns, timelines. When I finished, the kitchen was silent except for the refrigerator humming. Aaron didn't cry. He didn't shout. He put his hands flat on the table and nodded once. "Okay," he said. That word meant everything. Not forgiveness, not denial, alignment. We didn't talk about revenge that day, not out loud. But something shifted between us. A shared understanding that what had been taken from us wouldn't be returned by pretending it hadn't happened. I went home that evening and made dinner for Daniel. I asked about his day. I listened. I watched him lie with the confidence of someone who believes he's getting away with it. And for the first time since I met him, I felt nothing resembling love. Just assessment. That's when the marriage ended. The rest was logistics. I didn't rush. That's what surprises people when they hear this part later. They expect urgency, drama. A woman unraveling herself, trying to catch a man in the act like proof will hurt less if it's loud. I did the opposite. I slowed down. Betrayal wants panic. Panic makes you sloppy. I wasn't going to give Daniel that luxury. I watched him the way you watch someone you no longer owe the benefit of the doubt. He woke before me that week, which was new, showered longer, checked his phone in the hallway instead of the bedroom, small adjustments, careful ones, the kind people make when they think they're managing risk. At breakfast, he asked if I was feeling okay. "You seem quiet," he said. I smiled at him. Just enough. "I'm thinking," I said. He accepted that answer too easily. He always had. At work, I didn't confide in anyone, not my closest friend, not the coworker who had been divorced twice and loved to say she could spot a cheater a mile away. This wasn't communal grief. This was surgical. At home, I kept my routines intact. Laundry, meals, conversation. I let him believe that if something were wrong, I would be emotional about it. That assumption was his first mistake. The second was technology. Daniel thought he was discreet because he wasn't reckless. No explicit messages, no pictures, no declarations. He believed restraint was invisibility. It wasn't. He forgot about metadata. He forgot about shared calendars. He forgot about patterns. I didn't read his messages anymore. I tracked time. Mara's grocery runs lined up with his late meetings. Her gym visits coincided with his sudden interest in evening workouts. When she took a weekend self-care retreat, Daniel developed a migraine and stayed home from a family event he'd never missed before. It wasn't circumstantial, it was choreographed. One evening, Daniel left his laptop open on the dining table while he showered. I didn't touch it right away. I poured a glass of water. I let my hands steady. Then I sat down. He'd logged into a cloud account he rarely used. Old storage, forgotten archives. There it was. Photos he hadn't deleted because he didn't remember they existed. Not explicit. Again, restraint. Always restraint. But intimacy doesn't need nudity to be unmistakable. Her bare feet on our couch, his reflection in the mirror behind her. A half-drunk glass of wine on my kitchen counter at an angle I never place it. This wasn't happening in stolen hotel rooms. This was happening in my life. I closed the laptop without deleting anything. Deleting is emotional. I wasn't emotional. That night he reached for me in bed. I let him touch me. Not because I wanted him, not because I was confused, because I needed to know something. He kissed me the way he always had. Familiar, practiced, efficient. But there was a fraction of hesitation, a recalibration, as if his body was briefly unsure which version of intimacy it was meant to perform. That was my answer. Afterward, he fell asleep quickly. Relief does that to people. I lay awake and stared at the ceiling, cataloging everything I'd learned. This wasn't an affair born from distance or neglect. We hadn't been drifting. We hadn't been cruel to each other. There were no grand marital failures to excavate for meaning. This was convenience. Mara lived close. Mara admired him. Mara was married to someone who trusted both of them. It was easy. The most dangerous betrayals always are. The next morning I called my brother again. "I'm coming over," I said. He didn't ask why. Aaron looked worse this time. Sleepless. Raw. The kind of exhaustion that comes from replaying conversations in your head until language itself feels unreliable. He poured coffee neither of us drank. "Tell me everything," he said. So I did. I showed him the timeline, the overlaps, the photos. He didn't interrupt. He didn't defend her. That mattered more than any words he could have said. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. "She planned this," he said quietly. "Yes," I agreed. Not impulsive, not accidental. Planned. He laughed once, bitter and sharp. "She's been nicer to me lately," he said. "More patient, more accommodating." I nodded. "She needed you stable," I said, "so she could move freely." That was the moment Aaron stopped hoping for misunderstanding. He looked at me then. Not as my brother, not as the man whose wife had betrayed him, but as an equal standing in the same wreckage. "What do you want to do?" he asked. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a recognition. "I want the truth to finish unfolding," I said, "and I want them to think they're safe while it does." Aaron was quiet for a long time, then he nodded. "Okay," he said again. That word, repeated, solid, unemotional. Alignment deepened. We agreed on rules without having to list them. No scenes, no confrontations yet, no warning shots. Revenge, if it was going to happen, would not look like revenge. It would look like consequence. When I got home that evening, Daniel was cooking dinner. He turned, smiling, holding a wooden spoon like a peace offering. "Thought I'd surprise you," he said. I kissed his cheek. "How thoughtful," I replied. He had no idea that the marriage he thought he was quietly escaping had already left him behind. That night, as I lay beside him, I didn't feel anger. Anger is noisy. It demands expression. What I felt was resolve, the kind that doesn't announce itself, the kind that waits. And Daniel, already drifting toward sleep, mistook my silence for forgiveness he hadn't asked for. He would keep making that mistake. Not for long, but long enough. People imagine this part is explosive. They're wrong. The truth didn't detonate. It settled. After that second conversation, Aaron and I stopped speaking like wounded spouses and started speaking like adults who had just discovered the same structural flaw in two different houses built by the same contractor. We met again 2 days later. Not at his house, not at mine. Neutral ground. A quiet cafe where no one lingered long enough to overhear anything that mattered. He looked thinner. Not dramatically, just enough to notice if you were paying attention. I was. "She hasn't said anything," he told me after we ordered. "Not a word. She's been pleasant." I nodded. Of course she had. People who are lying, well, don't act nervous. They act generous. They soften their edges so no one looks too closely at the blade. "She won't," I said. "Not unless she has to." Aaron stared into his coffee like it might offer absolution. "I keep replaying everything," he said. "Trips, holidays, conversations. I'm trying to pinpoint when it started." "You won't find a clean beginning," I said. "You'll find a moment when it stopped feeling wrong to them." That landed. I could tell by the way his jaw tightened, not in anger, but in recognition. He asked then what I hadn't yet asked him. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" It wasn't an accusation. It was a wound checking its own edges. "I needed to be certain," I said, "and I needed you to hear it when I wasn't breaking apart." He nodded. He understood that language. Aaron had always respected preparation more than passion. We sat there for a long time, letting the noise of other people's normal lives wash around us, the clink of cups, a laugh from the counter, someone complaining about traffic. None of it touched us. "They think they're careful," Aaron said eventually. "Yes." "They think we're not looking." "Yes." He exhaled slowly. "So, what happens now?" That question again. Not desperate, not pleading, just precise. "We let them continue," I said. "For now." He raised an eyebrow. "We don't expose them. We don't confront them. We don't tip our hand." "Why?" "Because they're most honest when they believe they're invisible." He considered that. "And when do we stop letting them continue?" "When there's nothing left for them to deny." Aaron smiled then. Not happily, not bitterly, strategically. That was when I knew we were aligned in the way that matters. Over the next few weeks, we became quiet observers in our own marriages. Aaron noticed things he'd never allowed himself to see before. The way Mara's phone never left her side, the way she positioned herself so her screen was angled away from him, the sudden interest in clothes she never wore for him. "She's rehearsing a different life," he said one night over the phone. "Yes," I replied. "They both are." Daniel, meanwhile, grew careless. Not reckless, careless. He stopped hiding his satisfaction. He hummed while doing dishes. He took longer showers and left his phone unattended, trusting that I was still the woman who believed him without checking. That trust had expired. I began documenting, not obsessively, not emotionally, just enough. Dates, times, locations, patterns. Not because I needed evidence for court, because I needed evidence for myself. There's a difference. One evening, Daniel mentioned Mara casually. Too casually. "She's really good with the kids," he said. "Aaron's lucky." I watched his face when he said her name. The flicker of something he thought he'd concealed. "Yes," I said evenly. "He is." That night, I told Aaron. "She knows you've noticed," he said quietly. "No," I corrected. "She knows I exist." That distinction mattered. The moment people believe they've been seen, they adjust. But as long as they think they're simply navigating around you, they keep revealing themselves. Weeks passed. Then one afternoon, Aaron called me and didn't speak right away. I waited. "She's moving money," he said finally. That got my attention. "Small amounts," he continued. "Not enough to trigger alarms, just enough to feel intentional." I closed my eyes. Daniel had done the same thing. Nothing dramatic, just subtle financial shifts, reassigning access, reframing shared resources as temporary conveniences. They weren't just planning a relationship, they were planning exits. That was the moment revenge stopped being hypothetical, because betrayal is one thing, but preparation to leave your spouse exposed while protecting yourself, that's not an affair, that's strategy. And strategy deserves a response in its own language. We don't interrupt this, I told Aaron. We follow it. He didn't hesitate. Tell me what to do? I smiled then, alone in my kitchen. Not because I was pleased, because for the first time since I learned the truth, I wasn't carrying it by myself. What they didn't know, what they never considered, was that secrecy cuts both ways. They were hiding a relationship. We were building a reckoning, quietly, carefully, and with far better timing. You don't understand a betrayal until you understand the person who agreed to help carry it. Mara wasn't reckless. That was the first thing Aaron and I agreed on. She wasn't dramatic. She didn't crave chaos. She didn't want to be chosen in some romantic, cinematic way. She wanted comfort without cost, desire without consequence, a life upgrade that didn't require courage. Women like that don't leave marriages loudly. They replace them quietly. I started watching her the way I once watched Daniel, without malice, without hope, without illusion. At family gatherings, she played her role perfectly. Warm, attentive, always slightly self-effacing. The kind of woman people defend instinctively because she never asked for anything out loud. But there were tells. She never spoke directly about the future. Not vacations, not plans, not aging. She talked about right now and lately and these days. Temporal language designed to stay flexible. She also never spoke badly about Aaron. That might sound generous. It wasn't. People who are preparing to leave need the person they're leaving to remain intact. Demonizing comes later, after the exit, when justification is required. Until then, silence does the job. I noticed the way she watched Daniel when she thought no one else was paying attention. Not with hunger, with evaluation. He was a resource. So was she. That's when the shape of it became clear. This wasn't about love, or passion, or even escape. This was about optimization. Daniel liked to feel admired without being challenged. Mara liked to feel wanted without being exposed. They met in the middle, where neither had to grow. Aaron confirmed what I already suspected. She's been asking questions, he said one evening, about what I'd do if we ever split, about custody, about finances. My jaw tightened. She's mapping risk, I said. Yes. She's not leaving yet, I continued. She's checking the ground first. That was when we adjusted our approach. We stopped observing passively. We started listening strategically. Aaron began answering her questions with precision, but not reassurance. He didn't reassure her that things would be easy. He didn't threaten. He simply described reality as it actually works. Legal processes, timelines, the permanence of financial records, the way decisions echo longer than people expect. Mara listened carefully, too carefully. Daniel, meanwhile, grew bolder. He complained about me in abstract terms. Not insults, complaints. The language of someone laying groundwork. She's been distant. She doesn't seem happy. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. He was telling the story he planned to live in later. I let him. I even helped. When he suggested couples counseling, I declined gently. I think we're just tired, I said. Let's not dramatize things. He looked relieved. Men like Daniel don't want to fix marriages. They want permission to exit without blame. I wasn't going to give him that. The turning point came on a Thursday afternoon. Aaron called me from his car. She slipped, he said. I waited. She assumed I knew. Knew what? That you and Daniel are basically done. Her words. My grip tightened on the phone. She said it casually, he continued, like it was already decided, like the ending had been agreed upon off stage. That was important, because people don't assume consensus unless they've been promised it. She thinks Daniel has already left you, I said. Yes. And that means that he's told her something definitive, Aaron finished. Exactly. That night, Daniel came home late, later than usual. He kissed me with a softness that didn't belong to us anymore. I love you, he said. I looked at him. I know, I replied. That wasn't a lie. Love and loyalty are not the same thing. He still loved me in the way people love furniture they're planning to replace. Fondly, without respect. That night, I wrote everything down. Not to preserve memory, to prepare leverage. Mara believed she was ahead of the truth. Daniel believed he was managing two realities. Neither of them understood the position they'd put themselves in. They thought secrecy was power. They were wrong. It was exposure in slow motion, and they were walking straight toward it, hand in hand, while Aaron and I stepped quietly out of the way. The next part wouldn't be about watching, it would be about timing. And timing, unlike forgiveness, doesn't need to be granted. It only needs to be correct. Revenge is a childish word for what we were doing. Children want spectacle, noise, applause. What Aaron and I wanted was accuracy. We didn't meet to fantasize. We didn't drink while plotting. There were no late-night speeches about justice or pain or how unfair it all was. We met with notebooks, literal ones, because feelings distort memory, and memory is unreliable under pressure. We needed facts. We sat at Aaron's dining table one evening while Mara was at yoga, and Daniel thought I was staying late at work. The symmetry wasn't lost on either of us. Aaron opened his notebook first. "She's been preparing," he said. "Just not well enough?" I waited. "She's moving money, but she's doing it emotionally. Small amounts. Inconsistent timing. She thinks subtlety is invisibility." I nodded. "Daniel's doing the same," I said. "But he's worse. He believes plausibility is protection." Aaron almost smiled. Almost? We didn't talk about punishment. We talked about exposure, not public humiliation, not shouting matches or social annihilation. Those things burn hot and fast and leave too much room for redemption arcs. We wanted something colder. Consequences that didn't need narration. We made 3 decisions that night. First, we would not act at the same time. People expect symmetry. They look for coordination. We were going to deny them that comfort. Second, we would not lie. That part mattered more than either of us expected. No fabrications, no planted falsehoods, no distortions. Everything that surfaced would already exist. We would simply stop shielding it. Third, we would let them initiate the collapse. That was the key. People reveal their worst selves when they think they're winning. Daniel and Mara believed they were almost free, so we gave them space to hurry. Aaron adjusted his behavior first. He became calmer, kinder, less reactive. Mara noticed immediately. She mistook his composure for resignation. That's the danger of self-centered thinking. You assume silence means surrender. Daniel noticed the same change in me. "You seem lighter," he said one night. "I am," I replied. That wasn't a performance. The moment I stopped trying to save the marriage, the weight shifted. He misread that as acceptance. I let him. Behind the scenes, we prepared quietly. Not documents for lawyers, not ultimatums, narratives. Who would they tell when they left? What version of events would they sell? Where were the contradictions already embedded? Because lies don't collapse from pressure. They collapse from intersection. We mapped timelines side by side. What Daniel told Mara. What Mara told Aaron. What Daniel told me. They didn't match. That was our leverage, not as a weapon, but as gravity. One evening, Aaron called me with a single sentence. "She's pushing him." I knew exactly what he meant. "She wants Daniel to make the first move," I said. "Yes." "She wants to be the woman who waited rather than the woman who destroyed." "Yes." We both understood the implication. When people rush exits, they cut corners. That's when mistakes happen. Daniel's mistake came sooner than expected. He suggested a trial separation, casually, over dinner. "Just some space," he said. "No lawyers, no drama. I just need clarity." I looked at him across the table. "How long?" I asked. He hesitated. There it was. People who want space don't have timelines. People who have already planned do. "A few months," he said. I nodded slowly. "Okay?" That was it. No tears, no bargaining, no anger. His shoulders dropped in visible relief. He thought he'd won. That night I called Aaron. "He's ready," I said. Aaron exhaled. "So is she." We didn't celebrate. We reviewed. Because the most dangerous moment isn't discovery, it's departure. That's when people believe the past no longer matters. That's when they stop being careful. And that's when the truth stops needing our help. We didn't need to push. We just needed to step aside. The plan wasn't about ruining them. It was about letting them complete the story they'd already written. And then, not interfering with the ending. People expect revenge to arrive with force. They expect slammed doors, raised voices, a moment where someone finally stands up for herself in a way that can be filmed, shared, judged. That wasn't us. When the plan moved from theory to motion, it felt almost quiet, administrative, like watching a machine do exactly what it was designed to do once you stop holding it together with your hands. Daniel moved out on a Tuesday, not dramatically, a few suitcases, a careful tone. He said he was staying with a friend. He didn't say her name. He didn't have to. "I don't want this to get ugly." he told me, standing in the doorway like a man rehearsing decency. Neither do I replied. That was the last honest sentence we exchanged. The first mistake he made was assuming I would protect his image the way I always had. I didn't expose him. I simply stopped covering for him. When people asked where Daniel was, I told the truth. We're separated. Nothing more, nothing less. No explanations, no villain speeches. The truth, when left alone, has a way of growing teeth. Aaron did the same. When Mara stayed late, when she missed dinners, when she stopped pretending entirely. He didn't confront her. He let her talk. She told him she was confused. She told him she needed space. She told him she never meant to hurt anyone. She did not tell him she was already living part-time with my husband. She assumed he didn't know. That was her mistake. The second mistake was money. Daniel transferred more than he should have, faster than he should have, and with just enough arrogance to assume I wouldn't notice until it was too late. I noticed immediately. I didn't block it. I documented it. Mara made the same error from a different angle, shifting accounts, consolidating assets, preparing for a future she believed was already secure. Neither of them coordinated well enough. Their timelines didn't match. Their stories didn't align. And once those inconsistencies existed, we didn't need to touch them again. We let reality do the work. The first crack showed up when Mara asked Aaron a question she shouldn't have. Daniel says you're being really understanding, she said one evening, pretending it was casual. Aaron looked at her calmly. About what? She froze. Just for a moment. People reveal themselves in the pause between intention and recovery. About everything, she said. Aaron nodded. I am, he said. I understand exactly what's happening. She went pale. That night, she didn't come home. Daniel's world began to tilt shortly after. Not because of exposure, because of friction. Landlords want paperwork. Banks want explanations. Children ask questions. Friends compare notes. People who lie well in isolation fail when systems overlap. He called me 3 weeks later, not to reconcile, to manage. I think Aaron knows, he said. I imagine he does, I replied. Did you tell him? I smiled to myself. No, I said. You did. He was silent. You need to help me smooth this out, he said finally. That was the moment, not because he asked, but because he assumed. No, I replied. One word. Flat. Finished. By the time Mara realized Aaron had been documenting everything, not emotionally, not vindictively, just accurately, it was too late to pivot. By the time Daniel realized I wasn't going to play the role of reasonable ex-wife who keeps secrets for the sake of appearances, the narrative had already escaped him. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't warn anyone. I didn't destroy anything. I simply removed myself as a buffer between their choices and the world. That's all execution really is. You stop absorbing damage on someone else's behalf. And you let gravity finish the job. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It never does. It started with inconvenience, then discomfort, then consequences they couldn't talk their way out of. By the time Daniel understood what was happening, he was already standing in the wreckage, looking for someone to blame. He would find plenty of people willing to listen, just not me, and not Aaron. We were done intervening. The rest was inevitability. The collapse didn't look like failure at first. It looked like irritation. Daniel was inconvenienced. That was his first complaint. Things weren't moving as smoothly as they were supposed to. Paperwork took longer. People asked questions they hadn't asked before. Doors that should have opened easily suddenly required explanations. He called it bad luck. Mara called it stress. Neither of them called it consequence. Daniel started showing up unannounced. At first, he framed it as concern. Just checking in, he said, standing in my doorway with a tired smile. I want to make sure you're okay. I looked at him. I am, I said. You should call first. He nodded, embarrassed. Then he didn't leave right away. That's how I knew things were slipping. Men who are winning don't linger. Mara's version of collapse was quieter, but sharper. Aaron told me she'd begun rehearsing explanations. Not apologies, explanations. Long monologues that positioned her as overwhelmed, misunderstood, trapped by circumstances she never quite named. She keeps asking if I hate her, Aaron said. What do you say? I asked. The truth, he replied. That hate would require more effort than she's earned. She didn't like that answer. People who expect emotional reactions feel cheated when they don't get them. Mara wanted tears, anger, something she could use as proof that she mattered. Instead, she got distance. Daniel's real panic set in when he realized the story wasn't holding. Friends started asking careful questions, not accusatory ones, worse, neutral ones. So, how long has this been going on? When did you actually move out? Didn't you say you were separated before? The answers changed depending on who asked. That's another thing liars forget. People talk to each other. He called me late one night. I almost didn't answer. Almost. I need you to clear something up, he said, skipping pleasantries. No, I replied. There was a pause. I haven't said anything yet, he added quickly. I just need consistency. Consistency. The word tasted bitter. You want me to lie better for you, I said. That's not fair, he snapped. I'm not trying to hurt anyone. I closed my eyes. Daniel, I said calmly, you're trying to manage damage. That's different. Silence. They think I left you for her, he said finally. I let that sit. Did you? I asked. He didn't answer. I'm not participating in this anymore, I said. Not actively, not passively, not quietly. Please, he said. That word again. I ended the call. After that, the tone shifted. The visits stopped. The messages changed. Where there had been entitlement, there was now desperation. Mara fared worse. Erin told me she'd begun crying unpredictably. Not about guilt, about fear, about uncertainty, about how everything felt unstable all of a sudden. She thought once you were out of the picture, things would settle, he said. I nodded. She didn't realize she was stepping into a vacuum, I said. Affairs survive on contrast. Once the contrast disappears, there's nothing left to sustain them. Daniel and Mara had bonded over secrecy, over stolen time, over the shared thrill of getting away with something. Now there was no one to get away from. Just bills, logistics, expectations. Daniel started drinking more. Mara started monitoring his moods. The dynamic flipped fast. Erin didn't gloat. Neither did I. We didn't need to. The truth had done what it always does when it's no longer contained. It spread. By the time Daniel realized his reputation had shifted from unfortunate separation to careless betrayal, he was already behind it, trying to explain instead of define. That's the position people end up in when they confuse charm for credibility. I watched all of this from a distance, not because I was detached, because I was finished. One afternoon, months later, I ran into Daniel unexpectedly. A grocery store, a narrow aisle, nowhere to escape. He looked older, not dramatically, just enough. How are you? He asked. Good, I said. He studied my face like he was searching for something he'd misplaced. I didn't think it would end up like this, he said. I met his eyes. I did, I replied. That was the last conversation we had that mattered. He walked away carrying consequences he still believed were misunderstandings. I walked away lighter. The collapse was complete, not because he lost everything, but because he lost control of the story. And once that's gone, there's nothing left to negotiate. After collapse comes silence, not the dramatic kind, not the kind people notice and comment on. The quieter version, the absence of noise where chaos used to live. That was my favorite part. Daniel didn't disappear. He just stopped being relevant. People still mentioned him occasionally. His name surfaced in conversations the way old weather does. Something that happened, something no one expected to return. Mara tried to salvage something. That part wasn't surprising. She reached out to Erin first, not to apologize, to reframe. She wanted closure. She wanted to be heard. She wanted to explain how none of it had been intentional, how feelings had developed, how everyone had played a part. Erin listened. Then he said, I don't need a story. I already have the facts. She didn't contact me, not once. That told me everything I needed to know. People apologize to those they believe might forgive them. They avoid those who see them clearly. Daniel tried a different angle. He didn't ask for reconciliation. He asked for absolution dressed as civility. Emails about logistics arrived carefully worded. Polite, neutral. He wanted to be on good terms. He wanted things amicable. I responded when necessary, briefly, correctly, without warmth. That confused him. People like Daniel rely on emotional exchange, even negative emotion, to confirm connection. Indifference terrifies them because it offers no leverage. Financial matters resolved themselves slowly and predictably. Not because I fought, because I didn't concede. Erin and I both refused to rush. Urgency is how people manipulate outcomes. We denied it oxygen. Daniel's situation worsened. Not catastrophically, not tragically, just steadily. The way things do when poor decisions stop being subsidized by other people's patience. Mara left him, not with drama, with disappointment. She told Erin later that Daniel wasn't who she thought he was. Erin nodded and said nothing. I heard about it secondhand and felt no satisfaction. Only confirmation. Affairs collapse when fantasy meets maintenance. She hadn't wanted a man with consequences. She wanted a man suspended between two women, absorbing admiration from both. Once that ended, so did her interest. Daniel reached out after that. One final time. "I didn't expect to lose everything," he said. I read the message twice. Then I replied with one sentence. "You didn't lose everything. You traded it." He never responded. My life, meanwhile, expanded in ways that didn't require narration. I slept better. I ate without that low-level tension in my chest. I stopped explaining myself. Friends noticed, not because I told them anything, because I stopped shrinking. Aaron and I remained close, not bonded by trauma, but aligned by clarity. We didn't talk about the past often. There was no need. We'd already extracted everything useful from it. One evening, months later, Aaron said something that stayed with me. "They thought secrecy made them powerful," he said, "but it made them predictable." He was right. Secrecy narrows people. It forces them into repetition. The same lies, the same patterns, the same exits. Honesty, on the other hand, gives you room. By the time the dust fully settled, Daniel was no longer angry. He was confused. Confusion is what happens when entitlement meets reality without an interpreter. And I wasn't interested in translating. The story people tell about revenge usually ends with triumph or regret. Mine didn't. It ended with space. Space to breathe, space to live, space where someone else's dishonesty no longer cast a shadow over my choices. That was the real aftermath. Not justice. Freedom. People expect the ending to be loud, a transformation montage, a declaration, some visible reinvention they can point to and say, "That's when she healed." That's not how it happened. My life didn't explode into color. It settled into accuracy. I moved apartments. Not dramatically, just far enough that the walls didn't remember him. I kept what was useful. I let go of what I'd only been maintaining out of habit. Silence became normal. Not lonely silence, productive silence. The kind that lets you hear your own thoughts finish their sentences. I stopped explaining my choices to people who weren't affected by them. That alone changed everything. When someone asked how I was doing, I didn't perform resilience. I said, "I'm good," and meant it. No qualifiers, no backstory. Work improved. Not because I worked harder, but because I stopped compensating for someone else's chaos. My focus sharpened. My time belonged to me again. I noticed how often I'd been bracing before conversations, before evenings, before weekends. That bracing disappeared. I slept with the windows open. I cooked for myself and enjoyed it. I let friendships deepen without narrating my past into every new moment. I didn't date right away, not because I was damaged, because I wasn't hungry. There's a difference people rarely talk about. One afternoon, months later, I ran into someone who knew both of us, someone who hesitated before speaking. "I heard what happened," she said carefully. I nodded. "I don't know how you handled it so calmly." I looked at her. "I didn't handle it calmly," I said. "I handled it accurately." That distinction mattered. Calm can be performance. Accuracy is alignment. Daniel's life continued. I heard fragments. None of them required my attention. He struggled in ways that didn't make headlines. Financially, socially, internally. He wasn't ruined. He was diminished. That's what happens when people build their lives on borrowed integrity. Aaron moved forward too. Not quickly, not dramatically, but honestly. He didn't rush to replace what he'd lost. He rebuilt his standards first. We talked less over time, not because the bond weakened, but because it no longer needed maintenance. Shared clarity doesn't demand constant reinforcement. One evening, I caught my reflection in a mirror and didn't immediately assess myself. No critique, no inventory, just recognition. That was new. I wasn't proving anything anymore. Not that I was strong, not that I was healed, not that I'd won. Winning implies a contest. I wasn't competing with anyone. I was living. The truth is, betrayal ages people differently. It aged Daniel into someone smaller. It aged me into someone precise. And precision, once earned, doesn't fade. The life I live now isn't louder. It's cleaner. And that, I've learned, is the most unforgiving outcome of all. Reckonings don't arrive on schedule. They show up when someone finally understands that there will be no rescue. I hadn't seen Daniel in nearly a year when he asked to meet. Not demanded, not assumed, asked. That alone told me everything. We chose a public place. Daytime. Neutral. He arrived early. I arrived on time. He stood when he saw me, hesitated, sat back down. "You look, well," he said. I did. Not in a polished way. in a grounded one. "Thank you," I replied. He didn't. That imbalance lingered between us, quiet and unmistakable. "I won't take much of your time," he said. I needed to say some things." I waited. "I didn't understand the damage," he began. "Not at first. I thought things would reset, that once everything's settled." "They didn't," I said. He nodded. "They didn't." There it was. The admission people expect to feel satisfying. It didn't. He talked about regret, about confusion, about how things got away from him. He didn't insult Mara. He didn't fully blame himself either. He circled. People who've lost control of their narrative always do. "I never meant to hurt you," he said finally. I looked at him then. Really looked. "I believe you," I said. His shoulders relaxed. "And that's why it doesn't matter," I continued. He blinked. "Intent doesn't erase impact," I said. "And love doesn't cancel out betrayal. You didn't mean to hurt me. You just valued yourself more." He swallowed. "I was selfish." "Yes." "I was weak." "No," I corrected. "You were deliberate." That one landed harder. Weakness is forgivable. Deliberation is accountable. He stared down at his hands. "I thought if I explained—" "I don't need an explanation," I said. "I needed honesty when it mattered." That window closed. Silence settled between us. Not awkward, final. "I'm not angry with you," I said then. "But I'm also not available to you anymore. Not emotionally, not narratively, not morally." He looked up. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said quickly. "I'm not withholding it," I replied. "I'm just not offering it as a bridge back to relevance." That was the reckoning. Not punishment, placement. I stood. He stood too, a second too late. "I hope you find some peace," he said. "I already have," I answered. And I walked away. No tears, no shaking, no victory speech echoing in my head. Just alignment. The story people like to tell about betrayal ends with forgiveness or bitterness. Mine ended with clarity. Daniel lives with what he chose. Mara lives with who she revealed herself to be. Aaron and I live with what we learned. And I live happily. Not because someone else fell, but because I stood where the truth finally matched my life. That's the part no one warns you about. When you stop lying to protect other people, your life gets very quiet and very strong. That's not revenge. That's resolution.